This video is brought to you with the support of TrueFire. Learn, practice, and play with TrueFire. Hi, this is Keith Williams. Welcome to 5 Watt World. We're interested in helping you get the most music from the least gear. I came into my own playing guitar in the 70s, and it wouldn't be an overstatement to say that the late 60s and 70s were the heyday of the SG. Carlos Santana, Dwayne Alman, Pete Townsen, Eric Clapton, and later Angus Young. My young world of rock stardom imaginings were full of images of my heroes rocking SGs. These list videos are in good fun, and though they are often controversial, this list was remarkably easy to pull together for me. The top 10, the double necks, and the honorable mentions all fell into place very clearly. And as always, this is a list of the players that had the biggest impact on me. Well, it might differ from yours, and that's cool. I'd be fascinated to read your additions in the comments. But remember, this is all in fun. Let's use it as a moment to practice enjoying each other's opinions, shall we? Cool. So if you enjoy a good guitar-based romp, then stay tuned, because this is my list of the top 10 SG players that changed the world of music. If you enjoy our videos, make sure to subscribe, or grab a t-shirt, hoodie, or a Stomp preset pack to support what we do here. And to become a bigger part of 5 Watt World, sign up for the Friends of 5 Watt on Patreon. There's a friend level to suit any budget. The links are in the description. Okay, let's get going. Number 10, George Harrison. In 1966, Harrison acquired his SG, and it would be his main guitar until 1969. As such, it was his main voice on Rubber Soul, Revolver, The White Album, and on to the end of the Beatles in '70. You can see George using the guitar during the videos for Paperback Writer, Rain, and Lady Madonna. George played the SG live during the last ever UK concert, the NME Poll Winners Concert in 1966. The guitar was a 1964 SG Standard, and Harrison is said to have really loved the thin neck and light weight of the guitar. He would eventually give the guitar to Pete Ham of Badfinger when they were signed to the Beatles' Apple Music record label. After Ham's passing, the guitar spent years on display at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame before it was sold in 2003 to noted instrument collector Jim Irsay, owner of the Indianapolis Colts. Number 9, Robbie Krieger. Doors guitarist Robbie Krieger was a loyal SG user. His first electric guitar was a 1964 SG Special that he bought in a pawn shop in Santa Monica for $180. He'd been inspired to play guitar by seeing Chuck Berry use a cherry red ES335. The SG Special was the guitar was closest to Berry's guitar that Robbie could afford. As an early 60s Special, the guitar had 2 P90 pickups, dotted inlays on a bound fretboard, and the original small pickguard. Krieger used the guitar with his first band, The Clouds, then on the first Doors album. He then used it often during the early tours and played it into the early 70s until it was stolen and never recovered. But by this time, the Doors' success had led him by a number of other nice guitars, including a 1968 SG Standard that he bought in the same year for an upcoming tour. He used the Standard on the late Doors recordings and beyond. As a 68 Standard, the guitar had the large batwing pickguard and a pair of T-top humbucking pickups. He'd later buy a 67 SG Standard that would become one of his favorite guitars and would be the blueprint for his 2009 Gibson Signature SG. Number 8, Pete Townsen. The Who's guitarists used SG Specials almost exclusively from 68 to 71 when Gibson changed the production specs. He never warmed to the 70 spec and was famous for buying up Specials from the earlier years while he was out on the road, sometimes a half a dozen at a time. He played the Specials at many historic moments for the band. The Rolling Stones Rock and Roll Circus in 68, Woodstock in 69, and the Isle of Wight festivals in both 69 and 70. Townsen loved the P90 pickups, letting him reproduce the sounds he'd gotten with his Rickenbacker earlier in his career and then wind them up for the later sounds as well. He also realized that the guitars were so lightly built that he could bend the neck, bringing the guitar into much more true pitch. For someone that had made a name for himself smashing guitars at the end of the show, he joked that he could break an SG Special with his bare hands. He loved the unique sound of the P90 pickups for the way they straddled that of a single coil and heavier humbucking pickup. After Gibson changed the SG, he moved to using Les Paul Deluxes with mini humbuckers, a pickup that also walks the line between single coil and humbucking sounds. In a way, using the Deluxes were a testament to how much he loved his old SGs. Number 7, Eric Clapton. In the wake of Clapton's historic appearance on John Mayall and the Bluesbreakers' Beano album, the 59 or 60 Les Paul he'd used for that record had been stolen from a rehearsal hall during some of the earliest rehearsals for Cream. The guitar had been one of a pair that Andy Summers had found in London, and Eric knew that Summers had the other one. He badgered Summers until he sold it to him, only to have the guitar suffer a headstock break that was not repaired to Clapton's satisfaction. So we moved over to using a 64 SG that had been given to him by George Harrison. In '67, Cream's manager, Robert Stigwood, commissioned Dutch artist Marika Kroger and Simon Postuma, collectively known as The Fool, to create a set of painted instruments, costumes, and posters for the band's upcoming U.S. tour. Clapton SG was the instrument painted by them, and it took on the name of the artist, becoming known as simply The Fool for the artwork done on the instrument. The Fool became Clapton's main guitar in Cream while recording Disraeli Gears in '67, Wheels of Fire in '68, and Goodbye in '69. After Clapton had used the guitar, it was passed back to George Harrison, who eventually gave the guitar to Jackie Lomax, and then it moved on to Todd Rundgren. The guitar had sustained a lot of damage over the years, and Rundgren had the guitar restored in the '70s. Rundgren sold the guitar in 2000 for $150,000 to help pay off a tax debt, donating 10% to Clapton's Crossroads Rehabilitation Center. The guitar was later then resold to a private collector for around $500,000. In November of 2023, The Fool was purchased by Jim Irsay for $1.27 million, making it the most expensive Clapton guitar ever sold at auction. It was this 64 SG on which Clapton found his famous woman tone. It can be heard on Cream's Sunshine of Your Love and White Room, among others. Though only used by Clapton for just a few years, it is certainly one of the SGs that changed the way we think of modern music. Number 6. Dwayne Alman. Alman occasionally used a cherry red 61 Gibson Les Paul SG that he got from Dickie Betts for slide. Dickie had used the guitar himself in the early days of the Allman Brothers, most notably playing the guitar on Statesboro Blues. The guitar was likely purchased in April of 1970, as Dickie was first seen playing the guitar at that time. In mid-'71, Dickie acquired his famous 57 gold-top Les Paul that would be later nicknamed Goldie, and he gave the SG to Dwayne. The guitar originally had a vibrola tremolo, and by the time Dwayne got the guitar, it had been replaced with a stop tailpiece. As a 61, it had the original PIF pickups and the small pickguard. The guitar was supposed to be buried with Dwayne, but his brother Greg remembered that Dwayne had told him that if anything ever happened to him, he wanted the guitar to go to Jerry Groom. Years later, Groom sold the guitar to Graham Nash's wife Susan, who bought the guitar as a birthday present for Nash. The guitar was housed at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for many years as part of a display hosted by Nash. Recently, the guitar was sold by Nash at an auction in 2019. The opening bid was $125,000, but the guitar eventually sold for $591,000. By most accounts, the SG was Dwayne's favorite guitar, and he played hundreds of Allman Brothers shows on that guitar. I reached out to TrueFire to be my sponsor because I've used them for years. I'm currently having fun going through Joe Bonamassa' Blues Rock Masterclass. With over 2 million users worldwide, whether you're a beginner, intermediate, or advanced level player, TrueFire has lessons to enhance and inspire your playing. Get 35% off courses using the promo code 5watt35, or like I do, sign up for the All Access Pass to use the entire TrueFire catalog. I really like TrueFire, and I think if you give them a shot, you'll like them too. Sign up now to start your journey to being a better guitarist. I'd like to thank TrueFire for their support in making this video. Okay, I'd like to take a minute to recognize the 3 main users of the SG derivative Gibson's EDS 1275 double neck guitars. The roughly SG-shaped double neck was first put into production in 1963, and it ran until '67. It was popularized by John McLaughlin while in the Mahavishnu Orchestra, Jimmy Page, and Led Zeppelin, and was often called the coolest rock guitar in history. Page used the 1275 to perform the electric 12-string parts from Stairway to Heaven live, though they were originally recorded with a Fender 12-string electric. The double neck allowed Page to move from the rhythm to the solo section of the tune without changing instruments. Don Felder famously used a white 1275 with the Eagles for playing Hotel California. Capoing the 12-string neck at the 7th fret, he ran that neck through both an Echoplex and a Leslie to achieve the swirling 12-string tones on that track. And Alex Lifeson of Rush famously used his own white 1275 to play the band's tune Xanadu live. Okay, back to the 6-string countdown. Number 5, Frank Zappa. While he experimented with many guitars over the years, the main image of Frank Zappa in my mind is of him holding his cherry red SG. But if you're hoping to get Zappa's tones from a stock SG, you may well be disappointed, as he famously modified his guitars heavily. One of his most famous SGs, often referred to as the Baby Snakes guitar, was his main guitar in the late 70s. And it actually wasn't a Gibson at all. It was built by a guy that had made his way backstage at a show in Phoenix and sold it to Zappa for $500. Though it has plenty of SG DNA, quick inspection shows that it has a 23rd fret. It has an unusual fretboard inlay and has fancy woodwork in the top. Luthier and electronics wizard Rex Bogue then added some interesting twists to the guitar, including phase switches and onboard preamp. The other well-known SG, the Roxy, appears on the cover of Roxy and elsewhere. Gibson's Custom Shop built a run of 400 guitars in 2013 based on the state of the guitar at the time that live album was recorded in '74. The guitar started life as an SG Special that had been, again, heavily modified. Humbucking pickups were added and 4-conductor wiring to allow for splitting the pickups. There was a pair of mini toggle switches to tap the pickups and put them out of phase as well. The white headstock veneer is a mystery, even to Frank's son Dweezil, but it may well be part of another repair because the headstock shape itself has been changed slightly. Zappa fought hard to tear down the walls between jazz, rock, and classical music, and he did much of that battling on an SG. Number 4. Allan Hollingsworth. Praised by a who's who of innovative guitarists, including Santana, Satriani, Govan, Benson, and Van Halen, Hollingsworth never reached household name status, probably due to the challenging style of his music. Van Halen went so far in his admiration to help Hollingsworth land a major label recording contract, but Hollingsworth remained a guitarist until his death in 2017 at the age of 70. Though Hollingsworth used many guitars throughout his career, including custom-built instruments, it might be argued that all of these were based on his love of the SG. He used SGs from the late 60s to about 76. There, early on, he used a custom that had been modified to carry 2 pickups instead of the traditional 3. The 2 pickups were custom wound for him by Seymour Duncan. It appears on the cover of Velvet Darkness, and he used it into the mid-70s near the end of his time with Tony Williams' Lifetime. He owned a few other SGs across that time. Hollingsworth played in some of my favorite bands, and I was listening to him before I even knew the name. He played with violinist Jean-Luc Ponty, and on and off with the guys in Soft Machine. I just missed seeing him in the late 70s with Progressive Band UK as he left the band just before the tour. Near the end of his career, he began playing headless guitars, both those built by Bill DeLapp and various models that were built for him in an arrangement with Carbon, now Kiesel guitars. These double-cut instruments certainly harken back to the many things he loved about the SGs. Okay, time to slip in the honorable mentions. Sister Rosetta Tharpe was an inspiration and influence to many of the young blues guys in the 60s, particularly, it seems, all those guys over in Britain. Playing her SG custom, she's someone that all of us should be going back to school on, learning our rock history. Lead guitarist with the band Mahogany Rush, Frank Marino was the inspiration for many young players, though the band never achieved the broad success of some of their contemporaries. And Gary Clark Jr. seems to trade off between his signature Epiphone Casino and the P90-equipped signature SG. Clark's version of the blues is both deeply rooted in history and profoundly contemporary all at once. Number 3. Derek Trucks. If you're looking to break ground on your instrument, it's always good to start early. Often traveling on the road with his father, Butch Trucks, one of the 2 drummers in the Alman Brothers band, Derek had a deep musical education by the time most of us were just learning to read. He's taken a page out of Dwayne Alman's book and then written his own chapters worth of history on the instrument, integrating his interest in both Indian classical music and a deep history of the blues. Trucks is likely responsible for many of us looking at SGs these days. He's currently using a guitar built by the Gibson Custom Shop for a very short run of copies of Dwayne's original SG. Trucks got the prototype for that run from Dwayne's daughter, Galadriel. He alternates between that prototype and his own signature SG. He plays them both strung with an interesting set of custom-gauged 11, 14, 17, 26, 36, and 46 strings, tuned to open E, played without a pick. In his premier guitar rig rundown, he said that a very light guitar, built from a particularly great piece of wood, is the key to his minimalist rig of guitar, straight into a cranked Super Reverb-style Alessandro custom amp. He uses a signature Dunlop slide, based on the original Coracetin bottle shape, that is a specific weight. He said that since he doesn't use picks, he often gives away his slides to young players that he meets at shows. If the key to becoming a great player is to just play gigs, then Trucks has done multiple postdoctoral programs worthy of gig study, and he's far from being done teaching us all. Number 2. Tony Iommi. Iommi famously switched to using a 1960 SG Special during the recording of Black Sabbath's first record when one of the pickups on his early 60s Fender Stratocaster stopped working. That Special would become the blueprint for his guitar tone for the rest of his career. That first stand-in Special was a right-handed model, but soon after, Iommi miraculously ran into a right-handed guitarist who owned a left-handed guitar, and they traded. That left-handed Special would become his Monkey guitar, so named for a monkey sticker he added to the top. Monkey would be one of his main guitars for the rest of his career. That guitar was recently reissued in the Gibson Custom Shop, and then went on to be a production run as well. The guitar was modified by John Birch, adding a Synthplex pickup of his own design to the neck and rewinding the bridge pickup, then putting both in matching metal covers. In this form, Iommi used the guitar to record Paranoid, Master of Reality, and Volume 4, and all the gigs supporting those albums. After '72, he retired the guitar, worried it would get stolen out on the road, and he recently sold the guitar to the Hard Rock Cafe. He was then seen with an early white SG Custom during 1970. And in 1975, John Birch built him his first custom SG-shaped guitar. It was featured a black finish, 24-fret fingerboard with cross inlays, metallic pickguard, and high output pickups. He used that as his main guitar until 1981. After that, he began using a guitar built for him by John Diggins, who had worked for John Birch in his custom guitar shop. This guitar was dubbed the Old Boy. Diggins had started building the guitar while working with Birch. When Diggins became Iommi's guitar tech, he brought the guitar with him. In many respects, it's much like the original Birch guitar. The finish was damaged when it was left in a hot car while on tour in Brazil, and it was never repaired. In '81, Diggins built him a backup for the guitar, and later another version of this guitar in black. He'd go on to use a few other custom guitars, but in the '90s he went back to playing Gibson Custom Shop guitars. The first Gibson Custom Shop Iommi signature guitar was built in '97, and he used that and a black version of the guitar. Early in his career, Iommi had had an accident that removed the tips of the fingers of his right or fretting hand. After almost quitting after the accident, he moved to using very light strings and later tuning down as well, creating some of the heaviest tones ever recorded and influencing everyone that wanted to grind tone as he had on his SGs. Number 1. Angus Young. The impact of AC/DC on the rock music world is beyond measure. And though Angus was quick to give much of the credit of the band's success to his brother Malcolm, it was Angus who played all those solos on a parade of SGs. His first electric guitar was a 70 or 71 Standard, purchased when he was around 16 years old. He used the guitar exclusively until around 1978. With its backwing pickguard and vibrola tailpiece, it was the quintessential SG of that era. He had quickly removed the pickup covers, and he played that guitar until '78. Around '78, while visiting the States, he bought what he later said was a few SGs in Manhattan. One of these was nearly identical to his original cherry early '70s SG, except that it had a walnut finish and that it was marked as a factory second. Angus joked that the guitar was a factory reject, and he'd say, "Yep, that's me." He'd play that guitar on Highway to Hell, their biggest album to date. He also seemed to have bought a late '70s black SG Custom at the same time, and he used the guitar on tour following Highway to Hell. Gold hardware, white backwing pickguard, and the bound headstock tag it as a late '70s Custom. Following the death of singer Bon Scott, they weren't at first sure if they would continue, but in the end they added Brian Johnson on vocals, and 5 months later they released their seminal, Back in Black, as a tribute to Scott. The album went 22 times platinum in the US alone. He then used an SG Standard that was modified by John Diggins, the same guy that had worked with Tony Iommi on his custom guitars. Diggins replaced the entire neck and put lightning bolts on the fretboard. This guitar may have been his original Standard or another guitar, it's not clear, but Diggins said in the end the only part that was original was the headstock facing. Going into the '80s, Angus moved to using early '60s styles SGs. It was said at the time that this might have been due to a new deal with Gibson, but for whatever reason, he continues to use them to this day. Angus's playing is heavily based on the earliest rock players, owing much in particular to Chuck Berry, right down to his duck walking across the stage. At first glance, AC/DC's music might seem simple, but that doesn't begin to explain its ability to make us want to move, throw our hands in the air in devil horns, and bob our heads in time to the music. As I recounted in the SG video, the SG was the first truly great electric guitar I ever saw in person. It was owned by the woman that ran my church's folk group. She said she had a Les Paul and would bring it next week for me to see. Not knowing the Les Paul history, I was expecting a gold top, and I was bewildered when she opened the case and laying there was a 61 Les Paul SG, the first year production of that model. I can still remember the smell of lemon polish as she opened the case, with the sunlight streaming in through the stained glass windows, falling on that guitar nestled down in the yellow plush. Clearly the image of that SG is something I've never quite gotten over. If you like this video, you might enjoy my videos on the guitars of Tony Iommi, Angus Young, or the short history of the SG itself. First, I need to thank John Cordy for his amazing adaptation of a windmilling use of an SG Special. Any resemblance to music of that era is purely coincidental, I can assure you. I also need to thank John Beato for his help in building this list. John's a great resource, and as a good friend, he's quick to point out my ordering mistakes. I want to thank everyone that stopped by the online store and picked up a hat, a t-shirt, a hoodie, or the Stomp preset pack. And in particular, I need to thank the Friends of 5 Watt on Patreon. It's the guitar community I've always wanted. You're all 5 Watt World. I just make the videos. If you enjoyed this short history of the SG players that changed the world, hit the like button. And if you hadn't subscribed yet, go ahead and hit that too. Thanks for hanging with me until the end. Until next time, I'm Keith Williams. Thanks for being a part of the 5 Watt World.